So it's a done deal, it looks like, at this point. It looks like the president will probably sign it sometime this week. Are you thinking they have to be careful what they wish for here?
Well, it's disappointing. You know, the last person on talked about bipartisanship. I mean, 10 of my colleagues went to the White House to sit down with President Biden and said, let's work together. We did 5 stimulus bills last year, all on a bipartisan basis, and they said no. We're going to do it by ourselves. The Democrats did by itself. It was clearly not what the American public expected. It was not a focused bill, a targeted bill. We need to help the people who've lost their jobs. We need to help our small businesses. But no, it was a payback to New York and California. I mean, think about what they've done with these state bailouts. Our state revenues are equal to what the year before. We've already given our states $400 billion plus, and they just gave them another $360 billion, and they gave more to states like New York and California than states like my home state of Florida. But, I mean, it makes no sense how unfair this is to the American public. And by the way, you know what they didn't talk about? How are they going to pay for it? We have $28 trillion of debt. This is going to take our debt to $30 trillion, right? They don't want to talk about how they're going to pay for it, and now they're going to want to go do an infrastructure bill. I mean, there's a day of reckoning here. You can't just raise debt. I mean, if you look, if interest rates are 1.6% the 10-year, that means just interest expense a year is like $480, almost $500 billion out of a federal revenue source of a little over $3 trillion. I mean, they're not explaining what's going to happen with inflation, which means if we have high inflation, the poor families, those on fixed income, see food prices go up. Oh, by the way, gas prices are already up because of the Biden administration. They don't want to talk about that either. So I'm very disappointed that the Democrats and the Biden administration did not want to do a focused bill that would help the American public. So, we're going to keep working hard here. I'm optimistic about the future of this country, but I'm worried about higher interest rates, which will cause your mortgage to go up, your car, cost, or your car payment to go up. And we're going to possibly see inflation, which hurts our poorest families.
And that's what I want to talk about. Do you see any potential political consequences, a price to be paid for this? And let's be frank, Senator, when it comes to running up the deficit, Republicans have done all right as well as Democrats. It hasn't just been the Democrats who've run up the deficit.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a day of reckoning. I mean, who in their right mind believes that you can just keep borrowing money year after year? When I was governor of Florida, I stopped it. The 20 years before I became governor of Florida, they had raised the debt $1 billion year after year, every year for 20 years. In my 8 years, we paid off a third of the state debt. We reduced our interest expenses. But if you look at this, I mean, how are we going to pay for the things we care about? We need to have a strong military. We need to make sure we take care of Social Security and Medicare. When you're already now going to have almost $500 billion of interest expense, and you only collected a little over $3 trillion, how do you pay for the programs that Americans want? So I think that what the Democrats won't tell you is they're coming back with massive tax increases, and how's that going to help people, families all across our country? How's it going to help us get more jobs? People want jobs. They want a good economy. So I'm really concerned about what they're doing. It's not good for our country, and I'm going to keep fighting to make sure we take care of every family in this country.
Senator, you mentioned the fairness or unfairness in the treatment of Florida and New York, for example, you mentioned. There were some people in New York who felt that the SALT, the state and local tax limitation, was not fair to New York. But one of the things that we're parochially concerned about is people moving from New York down to Florida, some of the high-income individuals. Fair number of people have done that. Are you concerned at all that they may move right back again once the pandemic's over?
Well, David, let's go to basically to the SALT. Why would Florida taxpayers, basically the way it was set up, why would we pay a portion of state taxes? Why would we do that? By the way, Andrew Cuomo and I got elected at the same time as governor in 2010. You know what he did his 8 years? He never balanced the budget except by borrowing money. He raised taxes every year. And what happened? People left. People are coming to Florida for a variety of reasons. Some because of our weather, some because of our taxes, some because there's job opportunities. But if you look at it, you can't have, take New York. New York's expenses, their state budget per person is almost double Florida's. Double. And by the way, Florida's #1 in higher education. We're way better than New York. We're in the top 5 for K-12 education. Our transportation, our roads are better. Yeah. I mean, what's what Andrew Cuomo doing? He's causing so many people to live to move. I mean, I sent him thank yous when I was governor. I'd send him thank yous when he raised taxes because more people come to Florida.
Yeah, fair point, Senator. But one thing that we hear every time this is brought up from New Yorkers it's a good deal for the federal government because, in fact, if you look at the dollars flowing from New York to the federal government as opposed from the federal government back to New York, it's a much better deal for the federal government than it is for Florida.
You know what? You know, when they do those studies, you know what they do is they look at Medicare and Social Security. Well, people, you see what people are doing. They pay into the Medicare program or Social Security when they're in New York, and they say, these taxes are ridiculous. I'm moving. I'm going to Florida. And then they receive those dollars back when they get to Florida. When they take those numbers out, which they don't want to do, it looks totally different. By the way, I mean, I'll give you just an example. On Medicaid, per enrollee, for Medicaid, which is generally paid half and half between the federal government and the states, New York gets paid double what Florida gets per enrollee out of the federal government. So it's the opposite. Florida is the one that's paying in, and New York, when you take out Medicare, which it's not paid by the state. The state government doesn't pay any of this stuff. The citizens pay these things, and you're paying into a program, and then you move and you get the benefit of that program.
Just before we let you go, I want to ask about China. We've talked about China a fair amount before. What would be your advice to the Biden administration right now about how to deal with China? Let me ask you a very specific question. Should we consider not having our athletes go to China for the Olympics, just the way Canada at least is considering that?
We should not boycott the Olympics, but what we should do is make sure we get the Olympics moved. By the way, I had an Armed Services Committee hearing today. Guess what all was about? It's about the Chinese military. How about they are building a military to dominate the world? They're not building a military to defend themselves. They're building a military to take control of the entire world. We're spending dollars to put ourselves in a position that doesn't happen. So we need to hold them accountable for all the bad deeds, but especially the genocide of the Uyghurs. I mean, they're trying to just kill off the entire Uyghur population through sterilization of the women, through taking away the children. I mean, it's just disgusting what they're doing. So why would the International Olympic Committee ever let Communist China hold an Olympics? We need to not boycott, but we need to say these things have got to be moved to a country that believes in human rights.